Yeah, so then the next life of the FRE, the first FRE then kind of went quiet or fallow a little bit because Simon Penny had been a very important person who's in fine arts with Tilson in architecture, me in media studies in the English department, and then Simon Penny and Maria Fernandez left and went to Carnegie Mellon, and so we weren't doing too much. We continued our research, but we weren't that active. And then, but we're continuing to think about how can how does this work? Particularly, we're interested in the local global thing and how new media could be part of a monumentality, a new kind of monumentality, meaning the way in which identity formation worked across the levels of individual and collective activity. And also we were very interested in the question that ultimately became very important for the new version of the Florida Research Ensemble, which was how the new media changed the way in which academic knowledge could be delivered to the general public, to sites of need. So it's the question of the relationship between pure and applied research. I gave a talk on this and at the University of Florida campus, and John Craig Freeman had just joined the faculty in fine arts and actually was the replacement for Simon Penny. So Craig was at this talk, and just to give you an idea of the basic thing about the talk, what I was reporting on, when I moved to Florida back in 1972, right out of graduate school, I hadn't realized what I was getting into. I hadn't realized the significance of this place. It's, in fact, coming from the Northeast into the South, a lot of my friends and things said, "Oh, the South, it's like you might as well just drop into a black hole or something, disappear. It's just off the beaten track and everything." But the amazing thing that I discovered when I got down here was that I actually lived in Xanadu. I mean, what was that? Well, the way it worked was, of course, I was interested in electronic technologies, interested in electronic media, so I knew about the work of Ted Nelson. And Ted Nelson, in the 1960s, invented the word hypertext, and he had this very visionary idea certainly long before the internet, and even well before a lot of other things that happened with digital technology. Before it was possible, he had the idea, building on Vannevar Bush, other people, but he had the idea of digital networks and ultimately the kinds of ideas that became hypertext, hypermedia, and ultimately the internet for these networked, distributed, interactive systems of information using electronic storage and retrieval. And he called his project Xanadu. So I already had this idea that, well, Xanadu is something to do with electronic media. And then what else was Xanadu? Well, of course, there was this famous poem by Coleridge on Kubla Khan. Kubla Khan, Pleasure Dome in Xanadu did build, whatever the poem is, I forget. And of course, one of the most famous stories in history of creativity, when you read a book on creativity, one of the stories they always tell was how Coleridge wrote Kubla Khan. He's up there in the Lake District of England and whatever, and he had fallen asleep or something. He was reading a lot of books about travel and exotic places, and he fell asleep, and of course the other thing about him supposedly was that he was taking opium, which wasn't understood fully in those days. And anyway, he had a vision, and he woke up, and this poem was in his head. It's quite a long poem, apparently, about Kubla Khan and his pleasure dome in Xanadu, Shangdu, whatever, China. So he started to write this poem, and he got into it a ways, and then actually a visitor, a man from Porlock, was story goes, came to see him, and he got up from his desk and he spent an hour or some business with this fellow, and the guy went away and he ran back to his desk, sat down, and he'd forgotten. He couldn't remember anything else. That was it, whatever he had. So the fragment that we have, whatever, 10 verses or something about this poem, and this is in all the books on creativity. So then I started looking into it, and I said, well, really, where is Xanadu? So is it just it's China? I mean, this was like Marco Polo or something, went to see Kublai Khan. Well, it turned out, and of course we had this wonderful study, one of the masterpiece classics of scholarship by Lowe's on, who recreated Coleridge's reading. So, he looked into it completely. He looked into his creative process. This goes back like the 1920s or something. He looked into it, and he discovered that, close reading and recovering all of Coleridge's notes and everything, that actually Coleridge was drawing upon his readings dealing with 4 different places. And of course, one was Chengdu in China, which was the capital of old China. And then another one was, see if I can, Kashmir was another one of the places, and then Ethiopia. There's mountains of Ethiopia or something. I forget exactly, but they're the most exotic places for someone in England. What were the most exotic places in the world? China, Kashmir, and the 4th most exotic place in the world, as far as Coleridge was concerned, was based on his reading of William Bartram's travels. And Bartram, in the 18th century, had traveled many places, but he traveled to Florida, and he wrote his book, deals with his whole travels into the Southeast, but basically mostly about his travels in Florida. And in fact, the whole thing in Kublai Khan, as we have it, about the underground rivers, is a description of Alachua County, the rivers and springs of Alachua County, and sinkholes where the river goes underground into a sinkhole. It's Alachua Sink right here in Gainesville, Florida. And I couldn't believe it. I mean, it was really stunning to realize that that I was living, geez, I mean, at the end of the earth, in one of the most exotic places in the world as far as the romantic imagination was concerned. And this had a kind of exhilarating effect, because it was really an ecological image. It was an image of the way in which everything is interrelated, both in reality and in imagination. And of course, the nice thing about it too was that the poem Kublai Khan, which mind you is this image of Xanadu, which is now associated with hypertext and this interlinked nature of intermedia, was associated with my place. It somehow gave me a certain responsibility. It was a call, almost a duty to participate in this thing. And it also had this idea of the composite image that we were already working with in the first FRE, the composite image, the 4 places. Well, here was Xanadu, was 4 places. It was 4 important sites for the imagination of Coleridge. And this was related to our idea for Florida Rushmore, which was that a person's superego had these 4 important discourses that formed a person's personality, a person's psyche. And so, this got me thinking along those lines. And the other thing was that the connections here, part of it is just the ecology of the imagination, the kind of global interconnectedness of things, and that what we call electracy, which is to digital technology what literacy is to print technology or alphabetic writing, has this kind of interconnected, associative sliding connections of information that cut through